beyond human comprehension, detected Amelia's regular cadence and the slight scent of life floating on the currents. The apex predator came closer to the vessel, negotiating the limitations of its instincts and thoughts. Amelia felt a stirring in her mind, like a whisper encouraging her to awaken from the beautiful realm of dreams. Her eyelids fluttered open, and she was caught up in an old ritual, a link between the inquiring human mind and nature's wild, uncontrolled magnificence. The great white shark surged at the kayak with no malice or intent in that interstice of moments. It was an encounter driven by forces beyond comprehension. From a safe distance, Jack recognized the fundamental significance of this encounter. A beautiful display of symbiosis unfolding in front of his eyes. A vision of mystery.
Instructor. The instructor arrived eventually, but he was 20 minutes late. He blamed his tardiness on traffic and a hangover, which set the group on edge. However, he had a friendly outlook and seemed confident, so the group went along with it. They boarded a small boat stocked with the necessary gear for a scuba dive and went out a few hundred yards from the shore. This was a rookie dive, so the instructor only wanted to show them the basics and some of the underwater flora and fauna through a quick dive. After a rather tedious but detailed instruction on how the scuba gear is supposed to work and how they had to behave in the water, some basic communication signals, and more. Before long, the 6 of them took their positions on each side of the boat and flung themselves back into the water. Felix remembered that the initial shock of the cold water was disorienting at the start, but he was quick to get acclimated and was gliding through the water in no time. He was struck by the immediate beauty of the corals below them and the, at a glance, millions of fish swimming around them. At the instructor's command, they commenced the descent lower, so they could see the reef more clearly. Felix and Jan were entranced by the fish and the vivid beauty of the reef, but they couldn't help but feel like they were being watched. In truth, they were fine as the instructor had years of experience under his belt. The group continued descending until they were a few yards from the reef itself. The instructor told them that they were not to touch anything on the reef, as it was a single massive organism and it mustn't be disturbed. The group was okay with that, so they circled the reef and took in the sights. After a few minutes, Felix felt a strong grip on his shoulder and turned to see Jan with a terrified expression on his face, pointing beyond the reef. The pair went to investigate, only to find that the reef was being stalked by a massive great white shark. Jan later reported that the beast must have been around 20 feet, which is the maximum length a great white can reach. They immediately backed up and went to tell the instructor, who pointed for them to surface. After they breached the surface, a few of the divers immediately panicked and started swimming towards the boat. But the instructor stopped them and said there was nothing to worry about. As long as they didn't disturb the shark, they were fine. Felix and Jan were calmed by this information, but the rest of the group did not feel comfortable remaining in the water, much less after the guide suggested that they swim to the shark to interact with it. Felix, Jan, and the instructor went for another dive while the rest of the group went to the boat, and with each passing second, the pair became more paranoid that the shark would attack them. But they figured that the experience would be worth the risk. As they approached the shark, Felix thought about how dead its black eyes looked, but they didn't seem threatening. They got close to it at the instructor's command and touched the shark, amazed at how rough the surface of its skin felt, even through the mesh of the wetsuit. It was covered in scars, most likely from previous battles for dominance with other sharks. The shark circled them a few times, and it seemed to be minding its own business. However, things changed when they noticed that it started getting uncomfortably close to Jan, which Felix signaled to the instructor, but he didn't respond. This irritated Felix, who quickly swam up to Jan and pulled him away. This caught the shark's attention. As though a switch flipped, the shark suddenly twisted in its trajectory and made a beeline toward Felix, sinking its teeth into his arm and flailing wildly, seemingly trying to rip it off. Felix's respirator immediately fell out of his mouth as he let out a scream that was muted by the water around him. The instructor and Jan immediately swam up to attempt to free Felix, but the shark was simply too strong. Before they knew it, the water was red with Felix's blood, and they could barely see anything. Jan, who was holding on to Felix, felt his friend float into his arms as the shark shot away from them with a trophy in its mouth. Felix was unconscious by this point and losing a tremendous amount of blood, so Jan immediately started swimming up, clutching his friend by his side, with the instructor following close. When they breached the surface, the rest of the group on the boat was waiting with bated breath, as they didn't know what else to do. But two of them rushed to pull Felix out of the water. They managed to get him on the deck of the ship, and one of the divers went to get some cloth from her bag to tie off Felix's mangled arm. It was completely torn off at the elbow, with visible bone and sinew sticking out. Jan later remarked that it was no wonder that he passed out from the pain, as the injury was so horrific. The instructor rushed to the wheel of the boat and sped them towards the shore, alerting the Coast Guard about the situation to anacondas. Despite the danger, Brenton knew he had to dive from this cliff. He spent the next few days studying the cliff, measuring the height, the wind, and the water currents. He knew he had to time his dive perfectly if he wanted to survive. On the day of the dive, Brenton woke up before sunrise. He ate a light breakfast and spent hours warming up his body, stretching and preparing for the jump. He knew that one mistake could mean death. As the sun began to rise, Brenton climbed to the top of the cliff. He could feel his heart racing as he stood at the edge, looking down at the water below. He took a deep breath and jumped. The wind rushed past Brenton as he plummeted towards the water. He felt weightless, free, alive. He could hear the roar of the water as he neared the surface, and he knew he had to be careful not to hit any rocks. At the last second, Brenton twisted his body and entered the water at a perfect angle. He felt the shock of cold water as he plunged deep below the surface. He opened his eyes and saw the dark blue water around him, filled with all kinds of strange creatures. But Brenton wasn't afraid. He knew he was in his element. He swam to the surface and took a deep breath of air. He felt alive, more alive than he had ever felt before. He looked up at the cliff and felt a sense of pride. He had conquered the most dangerous cliff in the world. Over the next few weeks, Brenton dove from the cliff every day. He honed his skills, trying new dives and pushing himself to new limits. He even dove from the cliff at night, using only the light of the moon to guide him. But one day, something went wrong. Brenton climbed to the top of the cliff, took a deep breath, and leaped off into the air. As he soared through the sky, he felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. But as he descended towards the water, he saw something in the distance that made his heart skip a beat. A large shadow was moving in the water, and he realized with horror that it was a great white shark. Brenton tried to adjust his course and avoid the shark, but it was too late. The creature had sensed his presence and was swimming towards him with incredible speed. With only seconds to spare, Brenton braced himself for impact and hit the water hard. He felt the sharp pain shoot through his side and knew immediately that he had broken a rib. But the pain was nothing compared to the terror he felt as he saw the shark circling around him. It was a massive creature with razor-sharp teeth and a hunger in its eyes. He mustered all of his strength and swam towards the surface, trying to stay calm despite the pain in his side. The shark was relentless, though, and continued to circle around him, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Brenton knew he couldn't keep this up forever, and he needed to find a way out. He tried to swim away from the shark, but in the blink of an eye, the shark lunged towards him, and he swam headfirst into its mouth. The force of the bite caused significant trauma to Brenton's head and neck, and the shark's sharp teeth tore through his shoulders. Just when he thought all hope was lost, a group of dolphins appeared out of nowhere. They surrounded Brenton and chased off the shark with their powerful bodies and piercing calls. Brenton was in shock, but he knew he had been saved by these intelligent creatures. He climbed onto a nearby rock and collapsed, panting and clutching his bloodied shoulders. The dolphins swam around him for a few more moments before disappearing into the depths of the ocean. Brenton knew that he owed them his life and would never forget their bravery. Brenton then swam back to shore, bruised and battered, but alive. He knew that he'd been extremely lucky to still be alive despite being attacked by the great white shark, and he vowed to never take unnecessary risks.
The peaceful municipality experienced an extraordinary increase in bull shark sightings in 2011. Fear and dread grabbed the residents' hearts as the sharks crept closer to the shoreline, threatening the beloved settlement. In search of a solution, town officials approached Benjamin Ben Reynolds, a seasoned sea captain known for his expertise in navigating treacherous waters and comprehending the ways of the sea. Captain Ben set out on the Serenity Seeker with the sole purpose of unraveling the mystery behind the unusual shark activity and protecting the people from potential danger, accompanied by Dr. Isabella Izzy Bennett, a fearless marine biologist specializing in sharks, and Michael Mike Thompson, a skilled diver and underwater photographer. The crew set out on their voyage as the sun set below the horizon, filling the sky with flaming hues. They set sail into the azure waters, filled with both exhilaration and dread, the salty sea breeze filling their lungs. A government-assigned marine biologist, Amelia Crane, greeted Captain Turner with a cheerful, "Good day." She stated her intention to put a halt to the attacks in order to save more casualties. Captain Turner noted her desperation with a hard handshake and returned the gesture. Captain Turner described the dangers of the situation, emphasizing that they were dealing with a more sophisticated and dangerous bull shark, acting more like a lone predator than as part of a group. The crew had several close encounters with bull sharks as the days moved into nights. Their actions and a huge shadow loomed beneath the surface. An enormous bull shark appeared and took the team away. The passage of the shark sent foreboding waves through the water, reminding them of the dreadful fable. They continued their research, determined to find out the truth. Mike photographed the bull sharks throughout their dives, displaying their raw power and natural beauty. However, after studying the tape, he spotted ethereal entities in the backdrop that appeared and vanished like ghostly apparitions, scaring the team. The tension aboard the ship rose as the days passed. Rumors about the furious ghost spread, exacerbating their superstitious concerns. One night, they noticed an unexplained glow beneath the surface, and a luminous ghost in the shape of a massive shark ran towards the boat. The event disturbed and intrigued the crew, prompting them to reconsider the legends they had previously ignored. During their examination, they uncovered a pattern tying the shark movements to an old shipwreck near the town's harbor. Is there a link between the wreckage and the malicious spirit? They decided to investigate the shipwreck in the hopes of finding answers. The crew's underwater lights revealed the eerie ruins of the Vengeance, a once majestic warship, as they plunged into the dark depths. The ship's name sent shivers down their spines, cementing the link between old stories and current occurrences. They discovered relics of shark nets employed by merciless fishermen long ago among the wreckage. The image elicited many emotions, from rage at past violence to compassion for the bull sharks trapped in the nets. In hushed tones, Dr. Izzy theorized that the bull shark's ghost might seek justice for its species. Captain Ben cautioned the company not to lose sight of these beasts' true nature. He underlined that bull sharks were important components of the ecology, and their presence in the area signified a problem. The group devised a plan to lure the bull sharks away from Serenity Bay and reroute them to a safer habitat where they might thrive without endangering the villagers as a result of their findings. They used acoustic equipment to mimic natural noises, and the sharks appeared to respond to the call as if they were familiar with their relatives' ancient songs. Captain Ben, Dr. Izzy, and Mike successfully kept the bull sharks away from Serenity Bay throughout the night, restoring quiet to the previously ominous seas. After completing the assignment, the team returned to Serenity Bay to discuss their findings with the locals. Mike's compelling images were shown at the community center, and Dr. Izzy detailed their adventures with the bull sharks and the shipwreck. The peasants listened intently, their dread giving way to amazement and reverence for these magnificent creatures. Found's newfound appreciation for the ocean's natural beauty. The voyage deeply affected Captain Ben, Dr. Izzy, and Mike. They remained close friends as they embarked on new journeys to explore and safeguard the world's seas. Their story of the vengeful bull shark that led to a successful conservation campaign touched many people's hearts, inspiring them to learn more about the natural world. As the Serenity Seeker made its trips, transporting curious people to new areas. Waiting to be discovered, but their goal was to film the sharks while they were feeding. They had chosen the spot for its breathtaking lighthouse, which gave a fascinating backdrop to their expedition. The island was well known for its eerie past, and they had picked it. The history of the island, known as Emberlight Isle, was shrouded in secrecy. In the late 1800s, a lighthouse was built to assist ships in navigating securely across hazardous waters. However, after a severe storm in 1893, the keeper of the lighthouse and his family disappeared for unknown reasons, and the lighthouse has been unoccupied ever since. The locals thought the location was haunted by the specters of the family's deceased members, and some claimed to have heard ghostly mutterings in the night. John, Nicole, and the rest of their crew decided to make the old lighthouse their base of operations. The nearby waters were filled with bull sharks, allowing a fantastic display. On the other hand, as soon as the crew started their dives, an unexpected quarrel emerged. Strange things were happening to them as they explored the island, and the island's spirits appeared upset by their presence there. While Nicole was exploring the depths on one of her dives, her camera caught some eerie views of shadowy beings lurking in the coral reefs. She felt chills run down her spine, but the bull shark's temptation was too strong to resist. The following day, while studying the footage, they saw what appeared to be ghostly figures swirling about the sharks. It was almost as if the departed souls of the lighthouse were reaching out to the living from the afterlife. As their experiences unfolded underwater, the crew's tensions continued to rise. Kevin Gilbert, the seasoned captain of the ship, was certain that the ghosts were trying to forewarn them of an oncoming catastrophe. John and Nicole were adamant that they would finish their project regardless of any interference from the supernatural, even though he strongly encouraged them to leave the island. The group got ready for a night dive on the ill-fated evening when dusk fell upon the island, and as the night progressed, the world beneath the waves came to life with nocturnal critters, while bull sharks prowled the darkness looking for prey, to flicker and then go out. The divers began to feel anxious and stumbled around in pitch blackness. John's heart raced as he became aware of their menacing presence. The strange glow of the bioluminescent plankton suddenly made the shadowy outlines of swimming bull sharks nearby visible. Nicole's camera captured the subject's blazing eyes, creating a macabre and eerie image. They stayed together and tried to maintain their composure, but the sharks became increasingly anxious as they picked up on the tension in the water. Kevin looked into the gloom above the surface as he prayed for his friends and his safe return. He quickly grabbed a bright floodlight to direct them back to safety. However, when the light source's beam penetrated the water, a large bull shark appeared from the depths and attacked the light source. The level of violence displayed by the shark was unheard of, and it made the entire team uneasy. Both are angering the bull sharks. The sharks continued to follow the divers and circled them with a creepy intelligence, as if otherworldly forces were directing them. As they had almost reached the boat, the largest bull shark in the group, possibly the pack leader, made a daring approach. The animal's sharp teeth briefly grazed Nicole as it lunged at her. The crew reacted swiftly, dragging her away to safety, but the damage had already been done. Nicole's leg was bleeding heavily, and the crew was now in a potentially fatal predicament. Kevin revved up the boat's motor, hoping that the noise would frighten away the sharks, but the alpha shark seemed unfazed. Unfortunately, the beast escaped their grasp despite John, Nicole, and the rest of the crew's best efforts. It appeared the bull shark had a grudge against them, as it attacked them with a persistence inconsistent with their typical conduct. John grabbed a nearby spear gun and fired a shot at the alpha shark, striking it squarely in the flank with the bullet. This was John's last-ditch effort. The injured shark led the other sharks away, and they did the same thing afterward. The crew held the mysterious history of Emberlight Isle and how it was connected to bull sharks. In the end, they concluded that they would not go back to Emberlight Isle. The eerie recollections of that night would stay with them for the rest of their lives, serving as a reminder of the mysteries that lay just below the surface of our world and are just waiting to be uncovered by courageous and curious people.
And poor judgment would change Felix's life forever as he came face to face with the power of a massive great white shark. Felix was a Perth resident and spent a great deal of his life in the water, surfing in his free time when not at his job as a construction worker. However, one day, one of his friends came to him with the proposition of taking a scuba diving class, where an instructor would show them the ropes, and they would be able to check out some of the coral life near the shoreline and see what sorts of fish roam around it. Felix was quick to accept the proposition, was holding his eyes shut through a migraine brought about by his hangover. The diving company fired the instructor and offered compensation for Felix's treatment. As the sun rose over the pristine waters of the Great Barrier Reef, Harvey woke up in his small cabin on board and passed down for generations. One such pearl diver was a young man named Jera, who lived in a small village on the coast. Jera was an expert diver, and he had spent his entire life diving for pearls in the deep waters of the Indian Ocean. He was fearless and had never been afraid of the dangers that came with his job. But one day, his luck ran out. Jera had been diving for pearls for hours, his body accustomed to the deep ocean waters. He had already gathered a good amount of pearls, but he wasn't done yet. He wanted to collect as many as he could before returning to the village. As he dove deeper, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his left thigh. He thought he had hit a rock or a piece of coral, but when he looked down, he saw a large shadow moving towards him. The shadow grew bigger and bigger, and he realized with horror that it was a shark. Jera's heart raced as the shark closed in on him. It was a massive creature with rows of sharp teeth and a menacing presence. Jera knew he was in trouble, and he had to act fast. He tried to swim away, but the shark followed him, its jaws opening wide. Jera knew he had to fight back. He had heard stories of divers who had successfully fended off sharks, and he hoped he could do the same. He punched and kicked the shark in its nose and eyes, hoping to stun it, but the shark was relentless, and it kept coming back. Jera felt the shark's teeth sink into his flesh, and he screamed in pain. He could feel the blood gushing out of his thighs, and he knew he was in a life-and-death struggle. He desperately tried to grab his spear, but the shark kept attacking him. He fought back with all his might, punching and kicking the shark in the nose and eyes. The shark was relentless, but Jera was determined to live. He managed to get his spear and jabbed it into the shark's side, causing it to retreat. The shark recoiled in pain, and Jera used the opportunity abundance of marine life that few tourists ever get to see. So Jenny made up her mind. She would venture off the beaten path and explore the Honoka House sites, eager for the chance to discover the wonders of Hawaii's underwater world. The next day, Jenny traveled to the Honoka House sites with a local diving guide. Upon diving in the water, Jenny realized that the locals were not lying. The waters of Honoka House sites are as pristine as they come. The reefs are teeming with an abundance of colorful marine life, from schools of tropical fish to sea turtles lazily swimming by. The coral formations are a sight to behold, with intricate patterns and shapes that look like they've been crafted by an artist's hand. Jenny couldn't contain her excitement as she flipped into the glistening Hawaiian waters. The vibrant colors of the coral reefs and the graceful movements of the marine life around her captured her attention as she glided through the water with ease. It was like she was in another world, weightless and free. Suddenly, as she turned to head back to the surface, she found herself staring into the gaping jaws of a massive tiger shark. The creature was a behemoth with a body that seemed to stretch as long as a car and rows of razor-sharp teeth that glistened menacingly in the sunlight. Her heart pounded in her chest as she froze in fear, knowing that tiger sharks were known to be powerful and unpredictable. In that moment, she was at their mercy. Without warning, the shark lunged at her with astonishing speed, its jaws open wide, revealing rows of teeth that seemed to close in around her in slow motion. Jenny tried to swim away, but the sheer force of the shark was too much. With a loud, bone-chilling crunch, the shark clamped its jaws around her leg, biting down with immense power. Jenny never thought that her soul-searching would take a turn for the worse, her being mauled by a huge tiger shark. Jenny screamed out in agony as the shark thrashed, trying to shake her free from its grip. She fought with all her might, kicking and punching the shark's snout in a desperate attempt to break free. Blood clouded the water around her, adding to the chaos of the scene. Despite the excruciating pain and the fear coursing through her veins, Jenny refused to give up. Her survival instincts kicked into high gear, and she summoned all of her strength to fight back. She remembered reading that tiger sharks have sensitive snouts, so she reached out with her free hand and poked the shark's eyes with all her might. The shark recoiled in pain, loosening its grip on Jenny's leg, just enough for her to wiggle free. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled energy, Jenny swam with all her might, desperately trying to reach the surface. The water around her was tinged red with blood, and her leg throbbed with a searing pain. But she refused to let go of her will to survive. Jenny screamed for help as she surfaced from the water, and her guide quickly came to her rescue. Jenny was in tears, not only from the excruciating. It was a clear night, with a full moon casting a soft glow over the water. She lay down in the boat and listened to the sound of the waves lapping against the side. As she drifted off to sleep to the sound of the gentle lapping of the waves against the hull of the boat, Magdalene was startled awake by a sudden jolt. The boat was rocking violently, and she could hear something thrashing in the water nearby. She sat up and peered over the side of the boat, trying to make out what was happening. That's when she saw it. A massive great white shark, easily 15 feet long, was attacking her boat. It had bitten into the side of the boat and was shaking it back and forth, trying to get Magdalene inside. Magdalene tried to stay calm, but her mind was racing. She had heard stories of sharks attacking boats before, and she didn't know what to do. She grabbed a nearby oar and began hitting the shark with all her might, hoping to scare it away. But the shark seemed undeterred, continuing